One question I get from people is, what is the new covenant and what is the old covenant? Like, what's the difference? So, the old covenant, and some people even believe that the old covenant was that the Ten Commandments are no longer binding for Christians. Some people believe it differently. Here's what we see in Scripture. In Exodus chapter 19 and in Exodus chapter 24, the children of Israel are at the base of Mount Sinai. God gives them the requirements He has for them, the Ten Commandments being that, and they say, all that the Lord has said, we will do. Now, what I typically ask people when I'm explaining this is, so how did that work out for them? And the answer is not well. In less than 40 days, the Israelites are literally running laps around a golden calf in pagan revelry. Later in Deuteronomy chapter 4, I think it's verse 13, we're told that the testimony is, the new covenant, or the covenant is the Ten Commandments, specifically. Now, that covenant was basically based upon the fact that what God has said, I'm going to do, and it doesn't work well. Paul comments on this in Hebrews chapter 8 and verse 6, it says, but now he has obtained a more excellent ministry, inasmuch as he is also mediator of a better covenant, which was established on better promises. Meaning that this covenant is no longer based upon man's promises to God, but God's promises to man, and we'll read those in just one moment. But he says, if the first covenant had been faultless, then no place would have been sought for a second, because finding fault with them, and then he quotes Jeremiah 31. So he says that God found fault with the people, not the terms of the covenant. Deuteronomy 4 says the terms was the Ten Commandments. And the issue is not the terms of the covenant, it's the fact that the people said that they would do it, and they in their own strength were not able to do it. So Jeremiah 31, God shows up, and this is in the Old Testament, by the way, the New Covenant. He says, I'm going to make a new covenant with the house of Israel, not according to the covenant that I made with their fathers in the day that I took them by the hand to lead them out of the land of Egypt, my covenant which they broke, though I was a husband to them. So God says that this was my covenant, Ten Commandments being that, they didn't keep it, so he says, I'm going to make a new covenant, and in that Jeremiah 31, verses 31 to 34, he says that I'm going to write my law in their heart and in their minds. And then he says, their sins and their lawless deeds I will remember no more. This almost sounds too good to be true. God's going to forgive their sins, and He's going to actually give them the ability to obey. Ezekiel 36 says the same thing. He says, I'll give you a new heart, I'll put a new spirit within you, and I will cause you to walk on my statutes and my judgments, and you will do them. So the new covenant is not the Ten Commandments going away. It's literally God promising to enable you to keep the Ten Commandments. And that's the basic difference that we find in Scripture. In Exodus 19, Exodus 24, Jeremiah 31, Ezekiel 36, 22 to 32. That's the difference.